Awesome. Well, Sarah, welcome to the 20 something podcast.
My name is Sara Barco, so I am a networking strategist consultant. And when I was in my 20s, I had no idea that I'd be doing what I am doing today. It took me until my 30s to get here.
Awesome. Well, Sarah, welcome to the 20 something podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I will have you give your little introduction, tell everybody who you are, and a little bit about you. And then what we'll do is we'll rewind back to your 20s and we will walk through that path together.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you very much, Grace, for having me. I love how we were introduced and that
Yeah,
we had an opportunity to chat, and I love what you're doing. So this
thank
is
you.
awesome. My name is Sara Barco, so I am a networking strategist consultant, and I also call myself a customer retention detective. I love to find the clues of where people are falling off a customer journey and helping us to solve the mystery of why they're not coming back for more. And as far as networking goes, I love bringing people together, connecting, and really focused on connection driven first outside of transactions and um, I'm a big facilitator of collaboration over competition. So I love doing both of those.
Amazing. All right. Well, I guess we will figure out how we got there eventually, but
Right.
why don't we go back and wherever you want to start, if it's right at 20, if it's at post college, or wherever you feel like is significant, let's kind of walk through the
Gosh.
20s and figure out where we came from and how we got here.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So diving right in. So I love
Yeah.
it. Um, so in my 20s, gosh, going back that far, I'm 45 right now. And when I was in my 20s, I had no idea that I'd be doing what I am doing today.
Hmm.
It took me until my 30s to get here. So I often tell that to my son who's in his 20s that has to have it all figured out right now. Like
Right.
you likely will not. But I like how you said we know how, we're going to figure out how we got there because I do think that there were clues along the way as to what I'm doing now, how I aligned in my life then. Um, I was 22 years old when I had my son, Jacob. And so in my 20s, I was a young mom and very mature. I figured I had it all figured out. I knew life. I moved out when I was 18. I moved in with some friends of mine, and we were all doing life differently. My career started as most people's does. I was working in fast food. I worked for a sandwich and deli shop. And I had different jobs around the restaurant area as I was growing up. My first real job was probably in the behavioral specialist unit. And so I worked what they would call like a residential instructor.
Hmm.
So I worked for people that had mental and physical disabilities, and they were younger. So they weren't seniors, they were probably in their ages between like 40s and 60s. So just kind of on the verge of seniors, but they weren't able to do life the same way that other adults were with
Hmm.
their disabilities. And so I started my journey with a lot of empathy in that role. But not as much as I would have hoped to have now. Like when I look back into my 20s and what the role was working with people that had such severe mental and physical disabilities, I feel like I didn't do them justice in my 20s as I would have
Hmm.
now in my 40s. Um, just because I thought I had my life figured out then and knew what I knew everything. And so now I realize what that looks like getting older and just realizing that some of the people I was caring for were the age I am now and how much they suffered in their life
Yeah.
that I just didn't understand back then. So there's a humility in that and getting older and realizing like I didn't really have it all quite figured out. And there is a beautiful thing with aging that we take for granted. I think that we don't think about in our 20s that comes in along with our age. So I went from that job into working in a nursing home, and I started off as an activities director, going to school for social work. And
Okay.
so again, I'm a young mom at this point, and taking care of a toddler and trying to go to school and just figure out my life. And as I was going into the social work field, I was mentoring under a social worker in the nursing home I was working with. She ended up going into retirement and leaving that job. And I was vetted in at that time from the years I had in college and the experience I had working under her to fill in for her position. which
Hmm.
ended up being a long-term position.
Yeah.
Um, so that is where I was as a social services director, activities director for 12 years. And I spent most of my 20s in that job and
Okay.
working with seniors. Again, a humbling experience and
Yeah.
not one that I think as when I was 20, I was able to fully wrap my mind around what I was
Hmm.
really serving in.
Hmm.
But I do think that that's where the investigative role started to come into play because I started to see missed opportunities that were happening for seniors. I
Hmm.
started to see where they were coming in kind of out of their home, not really being able to take care of themselves anymore, and having us youngins, right? Us people that don't know them and really met them for the first time, tell them how to do life and take
Yeah.
care of them and lead them down this journey. And they didn't really care for that too much.
Hmm.
And so I had to start figuring out like what the gaps were from the time that they were removed from their home into a new home and what we were missing about that person and what we weren't really seeing from them. We saw this debilitated, 70, 80-year-old person coming in a wheelchair, maybe crying, maybe physically aggressive, but we didn't really realize the journey of how they got there.
Right.
And so that was where I started to really dig in and want to investigate how they got there and
Hmm.
how we could get them back to that, how we could find activities and find meaningful things within this new space for them that felt like home and
Hmm.
where they felt connected. So that investigative piece and that connectivity piece of how to like bring people together and help them feel at home in a space they may not feel comfortable, I think has been with me most of my 20s. I
Right.
just didn't realize it until later on.
Yeah. So I want to backtrack just a little bit to your college experience.
Mhm.
Did you not go to college until after you had your son, or what was that timeline like?
Yeah, so I did not go right into college from graduating. And so I was 18, I moved out, I did life. I said, I'm just going to figure out life for a while. I don't know what I want to do and be when I
Mhm.
grow up, so I'm just going to take some space.
Yeah.
So I didn't go back to school until I was pregnant with my son. And then
Okay.
I realized, okay, I want to figure out this a little bit more sooner now than later.
Yeah.
And so I was in school and I went for 2 years. I had my associates. And then after that, I stopped going to college because that's when that social worker role opened up for me. And back
Okay.
at that time, I didn't have to have a master's for social work. I was able to vet in under the mentorship that I had and just grandfathered into that position, really. So that was where my college ended. And I felt like I was just going to continue my career doing social work this way.
Wow. That's very cool.
Hmm.
So, if you're comfortable, can you talk a little bit about being a young mom? I haven't had a lot of people on as guests who have had kids early in their 20s.
Yeah.
And I feel like for my audience, there's such a wide scope of people. I know people that have kids or having kids at that age. So, what was that
Mhm.
like?
Yeah, it was challenging. My son's dad and I did not get married. We had contemplated that. We were on that path for engagement and going that direction. And then we realized that we were great friends and great parents, but we were not going to probably want to live life as a married couple, um, and so at that was challenging because him and I separated when our son was 1 year old.
Hmm.
And so we are still great friends. We still can work together as a parent, but that was a challenging space of life because um, you don't you're just kind of trying to figure out like your college path and your life path, and
Yeah.
the income isn't there, having a single income, and then just trying to raise a young toddler. It had its own set of challenges that were really overwhelming.
Hmm.
And I think it's a lot due to the people that I surrounded myself and the community that I had that I was able to move through that. So I encourage people to really surround themselves with those that they can create like that community with. Finding
Hmm.
those people, it really is a tribe. Like, and I tell my kids to this day. So my son that was a toddler when I was a single mom. I've been married now for 15 years, and my son is 23 and my daughter is 15. And
Hmm.
so we have come a long way, and I still tell my kids like parenthood is finding your tribe because
Yeah.
And when we celebrate birthday parties and things like that, and my kids are saying, "Well, why are you inviting all these people I barely know?" And I say, because they're the ones that helped take care of you
Yeah.
when I needed a tribe. And whether we're a single parent or not a single parent, it's still challenging. It just has its different sets of challenges. But I
Hmm.
think we still need a tribe, even
Yeah.
when we have it. We have a spouse and we have a life that we can that we feel more secure in. We still have to surround ourselves with those people that pull it together for us, that help us stay together. And I want to be that for other people too, just as much as they were for me.
Hmm.
But that does have its own set of challenges. I feel like there's so much that I carried into later in life that I tell him now. Like, I feel like there are things that I missed with him because I didn't have that time as um maybe I was because I was working two jobs sometimes at the time. I was always working. I felt like I was always working or in school some of those years. And I felt like that deprived him a little bit of things. And so there's those conversations that we have now very openly um, that there was years of struggle that I wish wouldn't have been there. But I
Hmm.
know that those years of struggle also grew us close. Like we have a close relationship. We have an honest relationship with each other. Um, and I don't know if we would have had all that. Um, I'm sure that there are ways to have that, like, right, but we came together in a lot of those struggles too.
Hmm.
Um, I think through it's important to have open and honest conversation and just
Yeah.
not carry that guilt because those are things that you can carry for a long time if you're
Hmm.
not open about them.
Yeah. No, I think that's incredible. So, did that at all play a role in your like college path? I know you said you ended up doing 2 years and then that job came open.
Yeah.
Um, did you ever think about continuing school or going back to school, or was it more so like a job opened up and like I need the salary, or what was that like?
Yeah, there was a little bit of both. I feel like there was a part of me that thought about and still does, even in my 40s. I'm like, oh, I wonder if I should go back and get my, master's or anything like that. And I still think, okay, I'm really okay where I'm at right now. I don't actually need that. Um, there was also a part of me that loved where I was going. Like I
Mhm.
had a regular income coming in. I was able to make it work for my son and the schedules ended up being like a 9 to 5 kind of position, um, where I was able to bring him to school and pick him up from school. So I had the
Mhm.
flexibility, I had the 401k, I had the benefits and things that helped me feel secure in that
Mhm.
role. So that's what kept me in a position of I'll continue to grow from here as much as I can, and then I'll figure it out if I want to do something different at some
Right.
point.
Right. Do you think that if things were different, or maybe like looking at today's day and age, you would have chased that security as much? Or do you think now being kind of off on your own, you probably would
Mhm.
have ventured a different route?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think now having experience entrepreneurship and being a business owner, I probably would have I think I probably still would have done the years that I did, the couple years that I did, because I do value that experience that I got from school and going to college. I think, sometimes we think we have to go right from high school to college,
Yeah.
and I'm glad that I waited a couple years because my high school years, I did not do. I was a horrible student. I like almost failed all my
Oh
classes.
my
I mean,
gosh.
I was not your straight A, anything. School was not for me. I say like I was social. I loved friends. That's why I was there. College was a different story for me because I think maybe because I was a young mom and I had a reason, right, to get things done and be there. But I was a straight A college student and
Mhm.
I was really devoted to my schooling and what I was learning. It felt meaningful, it felt purposeful, like I was actually applying it to something
Yeah.
versus school. I felt like, why are we learning all of like what are we going to use this for?
Yeah. I get that.
Yeah. So I think I probably would have done the couple years that I still did just for like,
Yeah.
that experience. But I love the entrepreneur world and I probably wouldn't have stayed as long in my role, knowing what
Right.
I know now.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay. So then let's kind of talk about how you did transition from the role you were in
Yeah.
into what you're doing now. Was it right to it? Was there a bridge? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, so I was in my role for 12 years. And really started to feel like there was no room for growth at that point anymore. I had approached some of the company leaders, and at this point, I was going out and I was facilitating and training and auditing at other facilities. I was really on a leadership path, but there was no leadership growth for me. I was kind of at a ceiling. Um, to not be able to do what I wanted to do and what I felt like I could do was doing some really strong consulting and coaching in the areas. And that kind of hit a gate for me. Along with that path, I started taking on a few new things at work and was taking work home. So it started to feel like I was working long hours. And anyone listening that's in like that kind of social work, nursing area knows that like your work really never ends. And even if it's not physically taking it home, it's mentally and emotionally taking it home.
Mm-hmm.
So there started to feel like a lot of emotions that I was carrying. Often I would be the one in the room where someone was taking their last breaths and there was no family present. And so it'd be me in the room with them, carrying that emotion for them, and then trying to process that on my own too. And it just felt heavy. That heaviness became stress and became medical issues. I
Mm-hmm.
started having severe migraines. I started to feel sick more often. So it actually happened that a chiropractic team came in and brought us lunch one day
Mm-hmm.
in my work and offered to do some like scans, some free chiropractic scans to assess our neck. And I had seen that done before, but I was like, no, I'm fine. Like, I know what my problem is. And my sister actually got a scan done and she's like, oh, I made an appointment. You need to do this. It's really cool. She's like, you
Mm-hmm.
have to come with me. So she worked there with me at the same time. And so I went in, got my neck checked, and they identified some areas of that were like potentially causing my migraines that got me
Yeah.
really curious. So I ended up making an appointment with the chiropractor. The chiropractor found through x-rays where there was some really early stages of degeneration in my neck and was driven to work on those migraines. And I was experiencing them probably 4 to 5 nights a week.
Wow.
And I got it down to like maybe 2 times a month is when I would have a migraine from this. So I was
Mm-hmm.
in love with the process of what this practice was doing and started telling all my friends and family about it and started referring people to this office to the point where the chiropractor came to me on one of my appointments and said, would you come work for me? And I just laughed and said, no, I'm not. I don't do chiropractic. I'm in the social work area. Like, no, do you offer insurance? Like what's this look like? Well, the pay was half of what I was making and benefits weren't there. They're like, well, chiropractic, if you are a patient, that is your insurance. Like we insure that you are going to get sick less and all these things. Like you don't need medical insurance when you are under chiropractic. And I'm like, okay. So I said no like 3 times. My husband actually was the one that talked me into it. He's like, well, what if you could get chiropractic available for seniors? Because my big thing was we were losing all these people early. Like they'd come to a nursing home, they'd debilitate, and they really didn't have the quality of life in the home that they did before, or the opportunity to have holistic care. Like
Yeah.
insurance wasn't covered when they came in there, chiropractic, massage, all those different modalities that we have available to us weren't available in nursing homes. And so I thought, wouldn't it be great if our seniors could experience this kind of holistic care and maybe increase their longevity in life? So my husband said, well, what if you could do that? If you worked for this clinic, maybe you could get more seniors into chiropractic and help bridge that gap in the sense.
Yeah.
And that was really appealing to me to be able to help from a unique end that I wasn't feeling like I could help in now. And I felt like I was watching more seniors pass away earlier than they should have
Mhm.
versus have a solution. Like there was this challenge that wasn't being addressed, and I felt like I had a potential solution where I could contribute something to it. And so I said yes eventually to that position. And that's how I ended up in the marketing role. So my role was to be a practice rep for that company. And so I went out and told everybody about chiropractic. And because I believed in what the doctor and his team were doing, it went really well. I brought a lot of patients in and grew that practice really well um, over the next few years of my career there. And that's kind of what brought me to the next step after that.
That's incredible. I absolutely love that story. I think
Yeah.
that like you touched on when you were in your early 20s and you were in that space, you didn't have the empathy that you feel like you would have
Yeah.
now because you don't really understand it. And I definitely think that is true for majority of people in their young
Mhm.
20s, or maybe even in their 20s. And I mean, I in high school, one of our classes was like a medical clinical rotations class for anybody
Mhm.
that wanted to go into the medical field, and that was like my thing. And I did a rotation on hospice, social work hospice, and just kind of
Mm.
seeing that end of things, I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this is really interesting. But again, so young where I was like, I don't really understand it. But I actually had two
Right.
grandparents this past year in assisted livings, who have
Mhm.
since passed away, but seeing that side of it really makes you
Mhm.
understand like, oh, like these people are still living their lives for the first time, even if it is the end.
Right.
And that has given me
Mhm.
so much more compassion and empathy for older people whenever I see
Right.
them. It's crazy how that just like opens your eyes to, hey, we're all doing this thing for the first time.
Yeah.
Why should we lose the joy in it, or the things that make us feel comfortable and at home just because we're a little bit older now?
Right.
That's
And
okay.
we're all gonna be there. I think that was the hardest thing for me to realize in my 20s was that I was gonna be there one day and I didn't want someone caring for me that didn't care for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't realize that so young. I thought, I'm never gonna get like this is so far away. Like being in this kind of position, it felt like decades and decades away, which it was at that point. But as we get older and we think about those kind of situations, we think, well, I just got from like 20 to 45, like by blinking. Like it just
Mm-hmm.
went by so fast. So it could go from 45 to 70 that fast
Right.
also. And
Right.
we are these like little 20-year-old humans inside the 70, 80-year-old body, right? And we just
Mm.
don't see that. And I think people just need to be seen.
Yeah.
And I didn't see that
Mm-hmm.
way before, but it did really get me curious to the impact that could be made when it was seen.
Absolutely. Were you able to bring the chiropractic work
Yeah.
into the nursing homes? Yeah.
Yeah, so much so that it got to the point where one day the doctor pulled me aside and said, okay, listen, like the majority of patients that you're bringing in are seniors. And I love seniors, but we have to bring in other patients too. And
Yeah.
so, like, in my hyper focus was on bringing seniors in, and I did a really good job
Yeah.
of doing that. And I hope to think that it did impact and keep people going for longer that way.
Yeah.
But it was in that position that I realized that more people need to be seeing it through different eyes too. It's not just a job. It was
Mm-hmm.
never just a job in that because it did really have not just impact, but truly honorable impact that I could look back at and say I'm really proud of those years.
Yeah.
And I wanted to teach other people to do that too. And that's what drove me into the consulting world was how can I teach other people how to do this too?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So tell me a little bit about that transition.
Yeah, so it was a conversation with me and the chiropractor, and I sat down with him one day and I said, I really think that I need to teach this. Like, I have a lot of people that want to sit down and have coffee and talk about what I'm doing different, and I think that it's a gift that I have. It's not just a thing that I'm doing. It's actually something I really believe in, and I want to see if there's something to that. And he agreed. Like, I 100% agree.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you thinking? And I said, I don't know. It's going to take me like a year or so to figure this out, to put it together. He's like, okay, so you need like, you're giving me like your year notice. And I said, yeah, I would like to give my year notice. And he said,
Okay.
okay, I'll accept your year's notice on some terms. And the terms were that I continue to, bring in and do the same role in the next year that I was doing for him, that this wouldn't interfere with that. And also that I would help train my apprentice to come up under and do the same kind of work as I
Mm-hmm.
did. And so I would help find that person and train them. And I did both of
Mm-hmm.
those things.
Okay. So within that year, what were you doing to figure out the next steps and to make sure that like when
Yeah.
that year was up, you actually had a job to do?
I was hustling a little bit. So I would work my job. I would come home. I would take care of my family. And at night, when people went to bed in my home, when my kids and my husband were resting or sleeping, I would work on putting my program together.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know all of what it would look like. I just knew that I had core concepts and like values that I believed in. So I started with those values and it was like, what are the key platforms that I want to stand on? What are the beliefs that I feel strongly about? What are the ways that I feel passionate and driven to do this different? And I think that's really what it came down to is how do I want to do this different than it's ever been done before?
Mm-hmm.
Because I knew that people were out there teaching this stuff, but I felt like I had a unique reason for doing it. Like I didn't want to just go teach chiropractic to people or teach people how to do networking better or teach people how to reach people for a different reason. I really wanted to help people see like missed opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
So the program that I put together, I worked on like eight modules for it, and it was going to be like an 8-week training course. And so I worked to put those 8 weeks together. Over each month, I kind of focused on a different module and kind of went with that. And then I did a lot of research. I watched anything or read anything that I could to teach me like how to put a website together or how to do Facebook. Like, did I need a business Facebook page? Did I need a regular Facebook page? How did I post? When I went into this world, I knew nothing about marketing. I didn't know anything about networking. The chiropractor I was working for told me I needed to join the chamber, and I didn't even know what a chamber was, a chamber of commerce. And so I had no networking experience, no community. And again, it was one of those situations where I had to learn to lean on people around me. I figured out quickly that I couldn't do it myself all
Mm-hmm.
on my own. And that took me quite a while, actually, like from, I say quickly, like because now it feels like from 20 to 45, that happened really fast.
Yeah.
But like actually figuring out that I could rely on other people took me longer than I would like to admit.
Yeah.
Because I think it's one of those things, again, pride and like feeling like you know and you can just do it and you want to show the world how great you can do it and you want to turn things around from like, hey, this is where I started and I wanted to show a great story of here to there. And in the midst of it, I think we lose focus that it's not all about us and
Mm-hmm.
there's a bigger part of the journey. So as I learned and am still learning to lean on others, that is how I think I did it because you have to, as a business owner, learning how to be an entrepreneur, um, I think go from a space of perfection, like feeling like I have to have it all together before I launch or I have to know what I'm doing, to a space of excellence of like, let me work with people that can actually help me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and learning how to be vulnerable and ask for help is huge in that age. It's hard to do, but what I have found out is that the more that I seek help, the more people are coming out of the woodwork willing to help and
Mm-hmm.
have value to add that I could never have contributed myself.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at success and when I look at it from 45 to 20 and where I've come, I look at like a whole community of people that have gotten me here, that it was never something I did on my own.
Yeah.
But yeah, diving in, putting my head down. I would also say that I did that a little much to the point where I got sick a few times because I would say I was in a hustle point for a while. Like most of us do when we're really excited and we want to launch something, we go into like a hustle mode and we forget about the world around us. And some days I would forget to move around. I would sit at my computer all day. I would not get up and eat regular meals. I would like meal prep for my kids and then be done, be like, hey, food's ready. I would forget to sit at the kitchen table to eat because I just had to finish up that last page of the website or get
Mm-hmm.
this last thing ready. And my family was gracious and understood and was like, we support you, go do this. But the day that I finally launched my business was November 1st, 2018. And I took the next day off to go to my daughter's field trip. And then the day after that, I was like, that's gonna be my first day in business. And I woke up and ended up in the ER. I had a pain that I couldn't even move. I could barely drive myself there. My son was in driver's training at the time, and I'm like, you need to be in the car with me just in case I pass out and you have to take over. We got to the ER and there was a grapefruit sized cyst on my ovary
Oh my
that I
gosh.
didn't know existed. And I had to have surgery. And so I was out of commission for 6 weeks after I launched my business.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I say that, and I think that it happened because I just I stopped feeling everything. Like I just was in hustle mode so hard to do it, and I had my timeline that I couldn't even feel pain, that I just kind
Yeah.
of went numb to everything. And that was a huge, huge awakening for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very relatable. Hustle culture is definitely
Right.
very prevalent today.
Mm-hmm.
And people often forget to like take
Yeah.
care of themselves, which like it's hard because, and I've been victim to it too, like when you're trying to build something and it's not there yet and you're
Mhm.
not working, you feel guilty.
Yep.
Like I sit down on the couch at the end of the day and I'm like, well, I could be doing XYZ right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Am I lazy because I'm not doing it? Or am I taking care of myself? And like, what's the fine line type of thing?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you launched your business and it was the 8 week course.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So outside of the surgery and being
Yeah.
put back in that sense, did it go as expected for you?
Yeah. After I had a huge like heart to heart with myself and God and everyone around me, just like this, it was not okay. Like I can
Mm-hmm.
never be in this position again. Then I started to get clients. So by this time I'm 30 years old now and I've just launched my business and 6 weeks in the recliner and then go time. And I refined a lot of things when I was in that recliner. I was like, I'm gonna just really restructure this and not be so hard on what it has to be, but be loose about it. And my clientele then was chiropractors because that
Mm,
was my audience that I knew and understood. And so I ended up having four clients that I worked with, one each day of the week. I did Monday through Thursday and then had took Fridays off and only had to work with these clients a couple hours a day.
mm-hmm.
And so went out, did my work, came home, had time with my family. It was wonderful. I'm like, this is great. This is
Yeah.
business ownership is life right now. So that was November November 2019 is when I launched. And then we had COVID, March 2020. So
Mm-hmm.
I was a solid business owner for 4 or 5 months. I was at an event where I was hired by a chiropractor to like oversee their one of their big events of the year, getting
Mm-hmm.
paid more than I was expecting to get paid for this and thinking this is amazing. I'm like loving, I'm killing this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the announcement came on while at that event that they were shutting it down for COVID.
Oof. Dang.
And we all thought we were just going home and it would
Yeah.
be fine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. Yeah.
And it
Okay.
wasn't.
So
So
how coming into COVID and out of that, what did that look like for your business?
it completely shifted
Yeah.
again. It did. Chiropractic at that time was deemed unessential, unfortunately. So my clients all went on pause. And so I took that time. Most of us, when we weren't working, we got paid to be at home. And so I
Mm-hmm.
took that money and I invested it in a coach that could teach me how to have digital courses.
Oh.
And so I spent a lot of time with this coach figuring out how to do a different type of platform on work. And that coach actually encouraged me to work outside of chiropractic too, to like open the doors to other industries and organizations and to really start honing in on what it was that I was teaching versus what the audience was, because what I thought I could teach could apply to any industry or organization.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really during that time I was doing that coaching and I was restructuring everything I had. And I realized I need to be networking. I need to get out and I need to meet people to share this new message of what I have. We're not networking like we were. So in 2001, we still weren't back to networking. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, I'm gonna flop. Like I opened my business, I have all this stuff, like I'm not even gonna get back with these clients and I'm not gonna have new clients and I'm gonna have to shut my business down. And
Mm-hmm.
I had in that moment I felt so much defeat. And then I remember the thought thinking, if I could just meet with one person a week for 52 weeks, like I could keep this alive. Like we could meet over Zoom. We could meet, however we could safely meet at this time that would be fine to meet, we can do this. I just need one person a week. And then it hit me that more people probably need this too. And that's where the networking community 52 Connections in 52 Weeks was born.
Mm-hmm.
Because I created a catalog I asked 52 people, hey, are you in the same boat that I am? Like, do you still need to like network and meet people and build relationships for your business? Are you doing okay? And
Mm-hmm.
everyone was in the same boat. Like, everyone didn't know what to expect and was trying to survive in that mode with their business and stay going and stay strong. That we knew we needed to rely on each other for that. And the only way we were going to get through that is if we could think of the solution versus the challenge and overcome that and find again those clues to like how we could do it different.
Yeah.
So that is where that all spiraled. And now here we are with a huge 52 Connections community that just kept
Mm-hmm.
going because the need was so great.
Yeah. Can you explain to everybody what 52 Connections is?
Yeah, 52 Connections in 52 Weeks is a networking community of men and women who want to network different, who are connection focused first, that want to make networking easy, not scary, that
Mm-hmm.
want to walk into a room and feel warm, and that want to build personally and professionally together. So we are a community that stays, we're hybrid. We virtually and in-person network. We have 10 to 15 different opportunities a month of anything from like virtual to lunch and learns of personal and professional development.
Mm-hmm.
We learn from each other. It goes again back to that community where if we don't have to do it ourselves, let's not. Like, let's
Right.
have a community of people and let's not lose touch of people because all throughout our lives, we meet wonderful people. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember so often from my 20s up, like, all these great people that I met that I didn't intentionally stay connected to, and I lost
Mm-hmm.
track of them. And like, how cool would it have been if we still were connected to this day?
Right.
So our community is built to like stay connected and always see each other so that we can do that, so like we can build those relationships that last. So,
Yeah. That's so cool. I think networking is something that us 20 somethings have a very hard time with,
mhm.
especially with how digital everything is
Oh
now.
yeah.
But it is for sure one of the more important things I've learned about in this like last span of like 2 years.
Yeah.
Um, when you look at mark or networking, what would you say is like the most important aspect of that for somebody who is not familiar with it, and is kind of like beginning in that realm?
Yeah. I would 100% say that you do not have to have any of it figured out. That just take the pressure off yourselves, like let your shoulders even drop and just say, I don't really know what networking is. I don't really have it figured out. Networking itself, by definition, is just a place to meet people. It's
Mm-hmm.
really how we talk and connect with people while we're networking that does anything in order for us to thrive. So
Mm-hmm.
just be you. The
Yeah.
biggest thing I would say is walk into a room knowing that every single other person in the room is scared. They're
Mm-hmm.
nervous about what to say or how to say it. They don't have it all together. They're not wearing the like perfect hat that has it all. Like everyone
Yeah.
that's with you has things, has life, has heavy things too that they're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just allow yourself to have permission to like walk in the room and just be you, and people will be drawn.
Yeah.
Um, I like to tell people in their 20s that come into 52 Connections that you do have an advantage because at this young age, people do, the older us is, we want to help you
Mm-hmm.
have it together too because we
Yeah.
see the culture. We see that everything's digital and we see how hard it is in the struggle. And there are no fundamentals for this. There's no college course that's like
Right.
really geared toward connecting with relationships. So the only connecting that you guys have right now, like to base it off of, is like the digital spectrum of things. So
Mm-hmm.
when you walk into that room, own that in your 20s, own that, and just allow the people that are older, have done it a little bit longer, come up and arm with you along that journey and let you know that they've got you. Like
Mm-hmm.
you are going to be able to provide impact for them in a lot of ways that maybe you don't know right now that they don't understand, and
Right.
they're going to be able to provide impact for you. It's
Yeah.
it's so amazing what happens with that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like there's such a great outcome of networking right out of college at this age too in person that can help
Yeah.
you down the road in any, it doesn't even have to be entrepreneurship, because I had this conversation with a close friend of mine when I was out of college who was kind of mentoring me.
Mm,
And because I was like, nobody taught us how to talk to people.
right.
Like, I mean, I finished college online because of COVID. And the most we would ever do with our classmates is like a group project where one person pulls the weight and then everybody else slaps their name on it. And like, you're not
Yeah.
speaking to each other. So
Yeah.
you get out of school and you're like, how am I supposed to go out into this adult world and speak to people, let alone if you're trying to run a business, tell people about that and get them
Right.
to trust you and believe in you. And I think there's a lot of fear in that realm for people in
Mhm.
their 20s, especially coming out of school.
Mhm.
Especially now as we get more and more advanced in technology of like, how do I even, I go to a marketing event, what do I say? Like, what do I do? Do I just, because I've seen people just straight up pitch themselves. I'm like,
Yep.
I don't know if that's necessarily the best way to go. So like if
Yeah.
what like from
Yeah.
your perspective, what is like the best way to go about it to
Yeah.
to kind of ease yourself into it, not come off as like, this is what all I'm here for. What can you do for me?
I would 100% not do that.
Yeah.
That is the worst way that you can do it. That's the worst way to show up. So
Yeah.
I would recommend one, a simple thing to do is ask other people that you know that are also going out networking that are within your age or older, doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Have them go with you because
Hmm.
having a few or at least one other person with you takes a lot of that edge off right out of the gate. So
Yeah.
there's a big fear of like standing alone or being in a corner and no one's there or just awkwardly looking at who to talk to next. So having someone with you just immediately removes that. The second thing I would recommend is just again owning that is going up to a table and saying, I have absolutely no idea who anyone is in this room. This is my
Yeah.
first time here. Help.
Hmm.
Like just vulnerably asking for help because here's what's going to happen is every single person at that table or in that space is going to be like, absolutely, let's band together and help her or him.
Hmm.
And so that there's this magic that happens when we ask for help and are vulnerable and with honesty, right? Not like to use that as a tactic, but to
Hmm.
really be real and truthful and say, I don't know anyone in this room, and I could stand here awkwardly and like feel ridiculous, or I could just ask for help. So,
Yeah.
could any of you at this table introduce me to someone, or can we just talk? Like, can we have a
Hmm.
conversation and you tell me what I should do next? There's there's beauty in that, and there's
Yeah.
power in that, and people will start introducing you to everyone they know in the room, I promise.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a great outcome with
Yeah.
being vulnerable in those types of situations. And I think at this age, there's a lot of opportunity to put yourself in situations where you will be networking without it necessarily being called a
Yep.
networking event. Like, I'm a part of a run club here, and I have had more podcast guests come from that run club
Yeah.
than anything else. But I didn't go into it thinking, "Ooh, who can I get for my podcast?" It was more so
Exactly.
like at this age, especially when you get out of college, making friends is like a whole another ordeal. And I think that my generation around my age is really taking the entrepreneurship route heavily. And so joining clubs like that
Yeah.
can be a really good space to kind of like ease yourself into it and learn how to talk to
Mhm.
people. Because
Yes,
everybody there is there for the same purpose. Like, nobody there
100%.
is there to be like, oh, I'm, better than everybody. And I have all these, like, everybody's there because we all
Yep.
share the same values and we want to meet people. And then you never know where that's going to take you.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I would say with that, like that it's great to think about a goal that doesn't revolve around you too. Like when you
Mhm.
go into something like your run club, you wouldn't necessarily think, but if you know it's a networking type event and you want to be intentional, when you think about goals, don't think about like how many cards you can get or how many people you can shake hands with or, think about like how many, maybe I'd like to hear two people's story today.
Mm.
And I'd like to hear about the impact they make. So when you think about that and when you have that in the front of your mind, you're going in with a different perspective versus like, oh, I'm going to collect some leads and make some sales or do some this. you're going in with a perspective totally outside of yourself, and that in itself will draw the right people to you as well.
Mhm.
But I love that what you said about the run club
Mhm.
because one of the modules that I've still held on to, and I still have the 8 phases of the customer journey, and that the first phase is the assess phase. Everyone is assessing you. Doesn't matter if you're at a networking event or at a run club or if you're in line at the grocery store, you are always being assessed, and you never know when people are looking at you for what types of opportunities too. So it's always important to be humble, to
Mhm.
be okay being vulnerable, to just show up as ourselves and to be open to those kinds of things, to be
Yeah.
open to possibilities and opportunities that we aren't expecting. And I
Mhm.
think that's just important to consider wherever we are, whatever we're doing.
Mhm. Would you say that networking is throughout all stages of building a business, or does it
Oh,
come
yeah.
after it's built? I feel like a lot of people try and like hide what they're doing until it's officially launched, but do you
Yeah.
think that it's just as important in the beginning stages while you're creating something?
Yeah, and that's a great question because so many people will say, "Oh, I probably should wait till after my business is established and then I'll go invest in some networking or go out and
Mhm.
start meeting some people." And I agree, like go out now and start talking to people because the connections that you build now, the people that you meet now are actually going to be so instrumental in what you're capable of doing. I
Mhm.
think probably what I've done, what I've started off doing from in my mid 20s into now has shifted and rebranded itself probably 10 to 15 times in that
Mhm.
time. So if you think you're doing like one singular thing that whole time and that's what you're going to be networking and growing, that might
Right.
not be the case. But
Right.
if we are networking with in advance and building, sometimes what we find out and understand and learn from others in the room is a shift that might need to happen before we launch what we think we did into something different.
Mhm.
Um, because what I started off doing could have been completely different without the right people
Right.
around me to
For
be able
sure.
to get it to where it is now. And
Yeah.
surrounding yourself with them I would also say to that, don't just network when you need to build your business. Don't
Right.
just network when you're short on sales or when you're short on clients or when you're short on customers. Proactive networking is so much better than reactive networking. So find a consistent rhythm and block it and protect it. It's one thing to like mark it on your calendar and say, oh, I'm going to network this day on this week.
Mhm.
But when other things come up, it seems to me that networking always gets pushed to the back for people. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, I got too busy or I had this, I had to do this instead. And networking should be a priority. Connecting with people, like getting into the room to connect with people should be the priority because
Mhm.
that's what's really going to leverage your business.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Um, so I guess then to kind of like tie it all together when looking back, what would you say is one of the best things you learned or one of the most important things you learned throughout all of this that helped you get to where you are now?
Mm, gosh,
To
that is a
put you on the
powerful.
spot.
I know these are the notes I could have had in advance, huh? I guess it's not as hard to think about now because I think I've been so focused on it lately. Is that working in excellence over perfection. And I know
Mhm.
now that when I'm working alone and that when I'm stuck in that mode of head down and grind and hustle and all that, I am in a state of perfection and I am
Mhm.
working for myself and nobody else is going to benefit from me being in that mode. And so staying out of that perfection mode and
Mhm.
trusting the process of just working in excellence around others, as many people as you can surround yourself with that align, not just people that you want to surround yourself with, but people that align
Mhm.
with your philosophy and believe in you, the better.
Mhm.
Surround yourself with people that will cheer for you when you're not in the room. And I know that sounds like such a, I don't know the word for that, like one of those statements, but like there are those real life people that when you're not there, they will either bring you down or raise you up and find those people.
Yeah.
Don't just find any people, find those people.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
Hmm.
All right. Well, where can people connect with you? Like, what's the best way to get in contact with you as far as your consulting or the 52 connections or wherever you want people to go to if they're interested in having conversation with you?
Yeah. So the consulting is True Self BRM, B as in boy, RM.com. And that is where you can find me for all of the customer retention detective work.
Hmm.
And then 52connections.com is where my networking community lives on the website right now. And then we have our hybrid community. And I'm happy to talk to anyone, anytime, any of your listeners that want to chat about networking and connecting on a deeper level. Anytime they can reach out to me
Awesome.
via those websites.
Awesome. Well, I'll put all of that in the notes so that
Um,
people can access that. But thank you so much for doing this. I
Thank
really enjoyed
you.
that conversation.
You just like brought me way back to a space I was like, oh, I'm gonna talk about networking and marketing. And then I like went all the way back into 20s
Yeah.
world. That was so fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I love to get people to go back to that because I feel
Yeah.
like they think, oh, we're just going to talk about my career and then all of that jazz. And we get there, but I love
Mhm.
to hear the path because I think that's the
Yeah.
most important perspective is like it wasn't always this great
It
hoorah
wasn't.
success. And we're
Yeah.
all at 20 whatever living
Yeah.
that currently. And I know for me personally, I was so sick of seeing the triumphs. I was like, please tell me somebody else was doing this and I'm not the
Mm.
only one, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say for, one thing I wish people would have told me in my 20s is that you're going to screw up about 1,000 times before you get it right. But
Yeah.
every single one of those screw ups is so good for
Hmm.
you.
Yeah.
Like live in those screw ups because I think like all the times I've messed up has taught me so much. But I was like a too much of a prideful person to like go back and see and be vulnerable then.
Mhm.
So that's a huge piece to like what I see now with 20-year-olds is so much different. So I do see a lot of people being able to be humble and vulnerable so much younger
Yeah.
and set that pride aside and really ask for help. I
Hmm.
think that's a huge piece.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that's like the number one thing I learned in this past year was like
Yeah.
it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. I hope that, I mean, I think that there's so many young people that are so mature and are going to do a lot of cool things in
Hmm.
these coming years. And I can't wait to see what else comes up because there's so much ingenuity happening. I love it.
I know. It's exciting. It's
Hmm.
exciting to see. It's exciting to be a part of. So,
I love learning from it.
yeah.